Wingman Joker, thank you for listening to this channel and please support the channel. Please subscribe. Chapter 24, Causality. Be careful, lad, this place is not safe, the kind taxi driver told Adrian as soon as the latter gave him his fare and then prepared to step down. I will, Adrian smiled and said to the driver before watching him leave. He sighed and turned to inspect his surroundings. It was the exact opposite of downtown or the middle of the Lumar city where he had been staying. This place was a total slum with all kinds of dirty brick buildings and tin shacks, narrow alleys filled with sewage water, and many menacing-looking people who set their eyes on him as soon as he left the cab. Well, with his expensive-looking suit, he really stood out like a sore thumb. A very handsome and well-dressed sore thumb that is. He chuckled. Appearing like this might be dangerous, but it was also very safe as many people who would otherwise try to mug him would be wary of him. If a target was too good to be true, he might as well be a trap. Well, thanks to his handsome face and small stature, he did have that air around him. With that stupid thought, Adrian began to walk in confidence. According to his knowledge, this place, located in the southern end of the city, was a part of the wilderness about 20 years ago, but due to a period of heightened demonic monsters, attacks called the Monsters' Flood, many villagers and people from nearby towns chose to come here and stay in this place. Although their original towns were mostly cleared up and rebuilt, many chose to remain here. Lumar City had many more economic opportunities and was relatively safer just in case. Relatively, Adrian couldn't help but notice the nearby 40-foot-tall wall on the other side of the street. This thing was the only thing separating the city from the wilderness outside, and the poor people here were the second line of defense in case the magical arrays that protected the city ever failed. He sighed, shaking his head as he remembered why he was here. According to the taxi driver, there was a good place that sold all kinds of strange monster stuff 2 blocks ahead, so he started walking. Hey brat, are you searching for something? In a group of tattooed men who were hanging on one corner of an old building, one bald skinny young man who was sitting on a ledge called out for Adrian and asked. Tell him we are looking for his mother. Do you really want us to get in a fight? Yeah, ellipsis. Let's play it safe. I heard there are a certain kind of shops around these parts. Adrian hesitated for a moment then asked. Ones that sell a special kind of meat. He added to make it clear, he didn't want this man to think he was into some kinky sex stuff. There are things like that here. Shut up. There might be, the young man said, keeping his eyes locked with Adrian. Would you be kind enough to guide me there? Adrian asked directly. Me, kind enough to guide you? The young man asked in surprise, raising one eyebrow. Yeah, I will make it worth your time, he said, acting like a rich young master. The young man looked at his friends as if asking for their opinion. They just smirked and chuckled. He was the boss. Sure, the young man chuckled and jumped off the ledge. Follow me, he told Adrian before heading into one narrow alleyway. Adrian smiled, giving the young man's friends a nod before hurriedly following after him. Wait, did you notice that? Yes, the strange mana. Very neutral, as if. Could it be? Yes, it is a causality spell. Such things exist. Yes, but only idiots use them. Let's play along for now. The young man walked quickly, carefully navigating the maze of interlocking alleyways, but Adrian could easily keep behind him. After 5 minutes they reached a very dark alley where the young man, making sure Adrian was still behind him, entered one obscure butcher shop. Adrian followed right after, acting totally unguarded as he looked around the shop. Nothing special, just a lot of meat, and sausages hanging around and having a good time drying up. There was also a freshly butchered pig hanging in the corner like a lonely kid at a party, dripping blood into a metal bucket underneath him. A totally normal slum butcher shop. Old man, I got you a customer here. The young man shouted after he looked around and saw no one behind the old wooden counter. Jim, for the 100th time, stop calling me old man, call me grandfather-in-law. An old man walked out of the back drying his hand with a towel, and scolded. Do you know how much of a mouthful that is? Jim spat. Whatever, I got you a customer, he said, pointing at Adrian with his thumb. Oh, what a rare customer, the old man said, inspecting the well-dressed Adrian, who in turn was inspecting him back and almost gasping. A fucking 8th rank knight. When the fuck did all the experts decide to go into hiding? What can I do for you? The old man asked kindly, failing to notice Adrian's well-hidden shock. Ah, I want demonic monster meat, preferably from a herbivore monster. Adrian paused, thinking for a moment. I want some shank meat, and a few pounds of rib meat, preferably from a place close to the heart. Oh, the old man paused as he eyed Adrian. You want to eat those, don't you? He asked coldly. I am not that crazy yet. Adrian said. He heard that some trainee knights usually try to consume demonic monster meat to gain power quickly, and although they might get away with some minute amounts of it due to their robust bodies, their end was rarely good. I want to feed it to someone. He explained. The old man frowned and squinted his eyes looking at Adrian just to make sure this guy was not kidding. You want them dead? He asked. The only legitimate usage for monster meat was to try to make potions, everything else was heresy. Hopefully not, Adrian replied, clarifying that he was not going to use them to assassinate someone like the old man suspected. I will make sure that the process is as safe as possible. The old man squinted. Those old books are usually not reliable. He finally said. True, but I know what I am doing. Adrian nodded, feeling a little surprised this old man was not bad and this made him feel very strange. Why would such an expert hide here if he was not a criminal? Quote. If you want something to be eaten, it is not going to be cheap. The old man tapped his fingers on the old table. The hunters around here use mana poisons. Getting a healthy one that was slain traditionally is not easy. How much? Adrian nodded, feeling a little reassured. To tell the truth, he was prepared to go visit a few shops to find something suitable and didn't expect this old man to have it. His luck was good today. No, it is that. Right, I hate being manipulated. Then don't. But, this got me really interested. Let's see, your request would cost you 20 golds. The old man said directly, making Jim, who was smirking to the side, pause and look at his grandfather-in-law just to make sure he was not kidding. 20 fucking gold. Why don't you go steal a fucking bank? Deal, Adrian said directly, making Kim feel a little taken aback. But the quality must be assured. They must be purebred, wild, and I don't want any foreign mana in them. Adrian added, putting his hand in his pocket and taking out 2 small bags that he threw at the table. The meat was not worth that much usually, as he could hire a full team of hunters for that money, but as the old man said, getting a few pieces suitable for cooking quickly was not an easy task, so he could ask any price he wanted. The old man grabbed the bags and gave them an inspecting look before putting them away. Wait a few minutes, I will be right back, he said as he went away through a curtain door in the back, leaving the shop completely unattended. Quote. Jim frowned watching the old man leave. Take this, Adrian surprised him, flicking something at him. He quickly caught it in midair and took a look at it. A golden coin. Hiss, he gasped as he inspected it. It was rare even for him to get that much at once. In fact, he only expected Adrian to give him a few coppers, and the only way he helped him was to get some traffic into his grandfather-in-law's shop. This young master was filthy rich. You know that people who consume demonic monster meat die, right? He said as he pocketed the coin. He was curious. Quote. Adrian looked at him for a moment. Yes, but not always. It largely depends on their body's beta factor and tetration ratio. Jim didn't understand a word. What he is saying is that it depends on the physique and technique used, someone said, making both Jim and Adrian look at the newcomers who walked in from the back. It was a young girl, about 14 years old, with dark black short hair and wearing a bloodstained butcher's apron. A loli, it is really my luck day. Shut up. Fucking pervert. Tie him up. No. Done. Stay there. Sister-in-law, Jim quickly called. The young girl didn't even look at him. She just kept her eyes on Adrian and inspected him. She blushed for a moment there, noticing how handsome he was, but she quickly hid it with a nonchalantly cold expression. The young lady is knowledgeable. Adrian paused as he quickly inspected the girl's back. He almost gasped. Her body was a total mess, with the mana flashing randomly all over her body. How was this girl still alive? That was the first thing he could think of. I am, she replied dismissively, feeling a little cocky after being called a lady. Grandpa will be here with the meat in a few minutes. Luckily a hunter got a demonic deer yesterday by chance when it fell down and broke its neck while going after him, she explained as she blatantly checked Adrian from head to toe as if he was some kind of male model. It is just that we haven't gotten to cutting it yet. Oh, Adrian didn't reply as he further inspected the mana around the girl. Can I ask you a question? He finally asked as he couldn't contain his curiosity. What, wanna confess to me already? She asked, putting her hands on her sides and puffing her non-existent breasts. Sister-in-law, Jim scolded. This was not how a young girl should act, not even in the slums. You will have to wait a few years before asking me that again. Adrian dismissed her with annoyance. Her question had almost caused a certain part of him to go rampaging. I am just curious, how are you still alive? He asked. Hey, do you wanna die or something? Jim asked in an offhand manner. His sister-in-law had always been a little sickly, so such a question was very rude. Quote. Adrian didn't reply, but just kept glaring at the girl, ignoring the cold murderous air that began emanating from behind the curtain door. The old man was there. Her expression fell for a moment there, but she quickly got herself together as she glared back at him. You are more observant than you look, but being nosy is not a good trait. She replied, looking a little awkward as a little girl giving that kind of advice. True, but one might never know, he said as he reached for his pocket and took out a business card and slowly put it on the counter, being wary of the sharp aura from behind the little girl. She quickly grabbed it and frowned. Chestnut Technologies? She asked with a frown, looking up to look Aryan in the eyes. The coldness from behind the curtain lessened a bit as the eyes of the old man behind fell on the surname Red Oak. It was as if he was hesitating whether to make a move or not. Yeah, I am supposed to be the head of a new lab there or something, Adrian replied as he connected the dots, realizing why an old man was hiding in such a place. The cold murderous aura was all the proof he wanted. And, she asked coldly as she kept glaring at him. May I inspect your meridians? He asked directly despite being 99.99% of the results. The random mana and jumbled meridians were usually the result of someone trying to advance fast by using high-ranking forbidden magic. The problem here was the little girl was still too young to try such a thing, so it could have only been caused by poison or natural causes. Still, all of those reasons were not sufficient for the murderous intent the old man was shooting at him, so the only explanation was that the girl was born with such meridians, which also meant that most likely she was the result of some forbidden magic. The little girl frowned, looking at Adrian. She was waiting for her grandpa to make an entrance, but the old man said nothing, telling her it was her choice. Would you take responsibility if I became pregnant? She asked coldly. Sister-in-law, Jim yelled again in shock, looking at the door and fearing someone would hear her. This little girl's language was just too depraved, and she was particularly shameless. The result of her growing up in such a bad environment. He must stop her from hanging with him and his gang in the future. I will make sure to take care so nothing like that will happen, Adrian said gently, making Jim, who didn't understand what was happening, feel more flabbergasted. What was going on here? In fact, Adrian was hinting to her and the old man that he would be careful. Then let's see how much of a man you are. The little girl spat again as she extended her hand toward Adrian, making her grandfather almost start cursing at her to mind her language. Jim, on the other hand, was wondering if a policeman were to enter the store now, would they arrest his foul-mouthed sister-in-law too? Adrian didn't mind him, he just thought that the girl was very interesting as he took a handkerchief from his pocket and used it to hold the little girl's hand like a gentleman. Please don't make any sudden movement, he said as he closed his eyes and began to inspect the little girl's meridians. She just glared at him. It took him 5 minutes to finish and retract his hand as he looked at the little girl. What? Did you satisfy your curiosity? She asked, a little coldly. Adrian said nothing to her before turning to face the door. I know a technique, he said. What? Jim understood nothing. Adrian remained silent as he let the old man think. The girl's condition was very strange. If Adrian were to guess, he would say that her mother was subjected to some intense demonic energy while she was pregnant with her, causing the girl's veins to mutate to resemble those of demons. Not a demonic beast, but full-fledged demons. The difference was big. Demonic beasts were normal beasts that, due to the demonic energy, their veins mutated, allowing them to grow stronger and use mana to a certain extent. Demons, on the other hand, were the exact opposite. They were magical creatures that didn't have blood veins or arteries at all, but had strange mana meridians that were modified to allow the transfer of blood. For this girl, it was as if her veins had turned to meridians in many parts of her body, creating a strange amalgamation that should never work. The only reason she was alive was probably because her expert grandfather was making her drink demon blood that her veins could somehow tolerate. That's why such an expert was working in such a place as a butcher. It was the best thing he could do to squire a large amount of demonic blood without alerting anyone. Unfortunately, the normal parts of her body were reaching their limit, and if it were not for her high healing powers, she would have been long dead. The problem was that she was in a very carefully balanced state. Any disturbance might cause her to either go berserk and lose her mind, or die in a huge explosion. What Adrian was offering was a technique for demonic humans from another world, something that the people here might not even understand. And, what do you want for it? The old man who walked from behind the door with a paper bag in hand and a butcher's knife in another asked as he eyed Adrian. Such things can't be randomly distributed, I want the girl. What? The little girl frowned, feeling offended. Although she made a lot of dirty jokes, she was not that simple. You bastard. Even Jim felt offended. Jim, Mila, calm down, the old man put his hand on her shoulder. You mean your guardian team? He asked. He perfectly understood what Adrian meant and he was really tempted to agree immediately. Working in one of the high families would guarantee that she would be able to avoid being dragged away by the various families' Inquisition teams. He just needed to make sure that Adrian was trustworthy. Yes, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I didn't have one until now. Adrian replied, not caring for Jim who was now glaring at him as if he was dead meat. What is your rank? The old man asked. He was clearly knowledgeable about how wizard families were structured. Probably working with one of them in the past. I am not free to disclose that. Adrian pondered. I might tell you this though, I am Maverick's legitimate son. He finally said, making things clear by using his father's name openly. Both of the old man's pupils contracted as he carefully inspected Adrian's face. He knew what the latter's words meant. Killing Adrian to silence him was no longer an option at all. Adrian just stared back. Jim and Mila looked between them. Who the fuck was Maverick? How much would the technique help? The old man finally asked again as if weighing his options. It is 80% compatible, and if I go tuning it especially for her, it would be 100% in 3 years. Replied. This girl, if fixed up properly, had the chance to become a very special kind of magician. The old man clearly didn't believe him. Look, old man, stop with all the games, you were the one who called me here. Adrian finally stated, making the girl and Jim frown, not understanding what he meant. The old man on the other hand paused. What do you mean? He hesitated and asked with a frown. When the fuck did he call for this young man? Listen up, this is the first time I came to this part of town, and look and behold, I found this gem that only I can use, Adrian sighed. I am not stupid not to notice the causality playing in all of this. Causality, the old man's face fell in shock as if beginning to realize something. Seriously, are you mad or something using that type of magic? Do you know what would have happened if anything were to go wrong? Adrian spat. HSSS, the old man gasped. Mila, did you use forbidden magic? Contrary to Adrian's expectations, he faced the little girl and asked. What forbidden magic? Jim turned to look at his sister-in-law in shock before turning to the door again, making sure no one was outside. This was a very touchy subject, especially here in the slums where all kinds of dangerous people came to hide. Mila was taken aback. She just looked down. Nervously. Didn't I warn you not to? The old man flared. But, the little girl's eyes began to tear up. Where did you? No. You used the DI Carter hearts, didn't you? The little girls didn't reply. Her grandfather knew everything. Calm down, it should be okay now. Adrian, who didn't know the young girl was the culprit, finally said. What she used was a kind of wishing spell. Those things were very dangerous, similar to the thought tunnel spell Adrian claimed that he had used before to fool his father. The conditions to cast them were very harsh as they required a huge amount of mana, and their goal was to cause a ripple in the world's own causality. The problem was that the request must be very carefully crafted and that the solution was rarely what the caster wanted, as nature really works by following the simplest route, and if a solution was deemed impossible or too improbable for the caster's own level, the said caster would usually end up dead in a very strange way to resolve the said causality. For this girl, she was really lucky, as Adrian, who was probably one of the very few in this world, knew the solution was nearby, so the world pushed him toward her. He had noticed the strange mana pulling him in this direction ever since he stepped out of the taxi. The old man sighed, then turned to look at Adrian. Deal, he said, directly putting the meat bag on the table. Grandpa, shush, the old man scolded. If he were to refuse Adrian's proposition, Mila might really die due to her stupid spell. When can you give us the technique? Tomorrow, come to the Red Oak Hotel and, Adrian hesitated, request to meet Lady Red Oak. The old man raised one eyebrow. A stupid misunderstanding, don't ask, Adrian quickly said. Okay, the old man sighed, figuring out that Adrian was living with a woman. When do you plan to collect your payment? He asked. Adrian smiled and looked at a little girl who for the first time realized that she might have been messing with some kind of a dangerous beast. I will contact you once I make up my team and find a good place to train, You can also run away though, he proposed jokingly. He was not going to force anyone to join his team unwillingly. Once they enter the uncharted lands, their lives would depend on each other. An equal price should always be paid, the old man replied, making Mila shiver a little. This was something her grandfather always told her, and for the first time, she understood it. Adrian smiled and nodded. The old man was way higher rank than he expected. What he just stated was a part of the old wizard's law. People who read and understood that document were said to gain a glimpse of how the world itself worked. See you later then, he said as he left the butcher shop. Jim, go after him and make sure no one attempts to hurt him. The old man scolded. Jim, who was feeling a little lost, was a little taken aback. Old man, are you already worried about him? He asked. The old man never cared about his customers once they left the shop. Idiot, I am worried about your friends. The old man scolded. That young man is more dangerous than your entire gang. Go quick and stop anyone from mugging him. Okay, Jim quickly replied as he left the store and ran after Adrian. Chapter 25, Lunch. Thanks for the escort, Adrian told Jim as soon as they reached the main street. He originally intended to take a look around the slums, but his guide took the shortest possible route here. It's part of guiding you. Jim chuckled dryly, remembering how a few minutes ago he saw 3 of his friends who were frozen like tied chickens as Adrian approached them with a knife. If he didn't reach them in time and explain that it was all a misunderstanding, his friends might have been dead by now. True, Adrian nodded. What did your grandfather-in-law do before he became a butcher? He asked out of nowhere. He was always a butcher. Jim said he didn't seem to be lying. I have only known him for about 10 years though. I see, Adrian nodded, pondering if he should ask more, but after giving it a thought he decided not to. Well then, have a nice day, he said kindly before leaving the young man and hailing a taxi. Where to? The old driver asked. The Grand Red Oak Hotel, Adrian said looking at the sky. It was about an hour past noon. His trip here finished rather quickly. Right away, the driver nodded, then quickly began heading to the center of the city. Jim, who watched them leave, couldn't help but finally breathe in relief. Reaching the hotel, Adrian stepped down, paid for the taxi, then walked into the lobby and immediately got bombarded by the usual barrage of gazes of disgust. He ignored them as he quickly headed to the hotel's kitchen. They should have already finished cleaning up the breakfast and were about to start to prepare for the launch. Young Adrian, do you want some late breakfast? The kind old head chef who worked there asked as soon as he walked in. Adrian usually had a meal here after finishing school and before starting his shift, so his relationship with the kitchen staff was rather good. It was all arranged by Logan. Nah, the lady in the suite wanted me to cook a special meal for her. Adrian simply said. Oh, the one from the Red Oak family? The head chef asked. He heard the rumors. Everyone did. Yeah, Adrian nodded. He had long decided to go along with this, not explaining the truth. He was going to get a mansion in a few days anyways, and it kinda felt liberating not having all the people sucking up to him as they did in 99% of the worlds he was in. Damn, speak for yourself, I was a fucking slave. Poor guy, I was a prince. I was a CEO. I was an army commander. I was the son of a tribal chief. I was a miracle doctor. I was a 9 stars cook. I was a renowned scholar. I was a superstar. I was a famous gigolo. I was a lolicon. You are still a lolicon. True, damn all of you. Why only me? Do you want me to prepare the meal instead? The head chief asked, alerting Adrian, who was a little lost in thought. Nah, I have to do it myself. It is some kind of test from her. Adrian made up a random excuse as he took off his suit jacket and grabbed a random apron. So please don't even come close to me when I am working, lest she gets angry. Does she have a nasty personality? The head chef frowned. No, it is. Adrian hesitated. She is the worst. One of the assistant chefs who was standing to the side. I heard her in the morning scolding Dixon when she had her breakfast at the restaurant. Really? Adrian was surprised. Did something happen when he was not here? Yeah, I don't know what it was about, but Dixon ended up being slapped in the face. The assistant said. She even spat at him. Oh, Adrian exclaimed. No wonder he didn't see that guy when he walked in. Then I better not make her wait for me any longer. He quickly said, wondering what just happened. Yeah, just be careful. The head chef sighed. It was not his place to intervene in young people's relationships, but Lady Red Oak was really not a good match for the honest and hardworking Adrian. Sure, Adrian said as he headed to one of the remote cooking stations. There, he professionally took out the demon monster meat from the paper bag and then after inspecting it, he nodded with satisfaction. The old man really chose some excellent pieces. The mana was completely balanced and there were no signs of corruption. He laid it on the preparation board, then using a sharp knife he began cleaning them, then slicing them into very thin slices, setting them into a tray where he added salt and various herbs before throwing them into the grill. For others, it might seem just a normal cooking process, but if any of those chefs who were watching him could see how the mana was reacting in the meat, they would be flabbergasted. Under Adrian's precise control, not one bit of the mana was lost. On the contrary, the immaterial wisps of energy began to slowly form strings on their own, embedding themselves in the meat. This was the method he figured out after reading the cookbook. Since the mana was too chaotic, he just needed to tie it up in long chains to fix it in place and make it react with the body in a more controlled manner. Although it was all very dangerous for a normal guy to eat it, if one was being careful it would be manageable, and if anything were to go wrong, expelling all the threads can be done in a timely manner. The problem was now that this method of cooking could only be done by him, but that was something he would have to consider if his experiments really worked. The grilling didn't take long, as in just 15 minutes everything was done. Adrian professionally grabbed a clean dish, then began to arrange the steaks on it in an artistic manner that made even the head chef who was watching from the side sigh in regret for not hiring Adrian into the kitchen. Finishing with everything, Adrian threw his used utensils in the kitchen sink for some underpaid part-time workers to clean them up. Making sure there were no pieces of meat left on the station, he washed his hands, took off the apron, and put on his jacket before returning to the dish and checking it one more time before grabbing a tray, setting some plates and utensils on it, and heading out. He was very familiar with the kitchen here. "Thanks for lending me your kitchen." He didn't forget to thank the head chef on his way out. "It is our duty to serve our guests," the head chef sighed. "Hopefully the lady will like it," he said. He could see the care and effort Adrian put into it and couldn't help but feel sorry for him for falling in love with a woman who was out of his league. Such relationships rarely ended well, but it was not his place to intervene. "She will," Adrian said as he walked out of the kitchen with a dish in hand. Taking the service elevator, he reached the top floor where he unlocked the presidential suite's door and walked in. "Ah, Adrian, welcome back." Summer, who tied her hair in a ponytail and was dressed in some very comfortable pink shorts that revealed her elegant legs in action to a cute yellow sweater, greeted him casually. She was sitting on the carpet in the living room with many books open in front of her. "Did you have lunch?" he asked casually as he gestured to her to remain seated. "Not yet. In your letter, you told me to wait for you," she said as she carefully put the books away to make some room for him. "Right, come on then," Adrian said as he laid the tray on the coffee table and sat on the carpet next to Summer. "This is?" she asked, raising one eyebrow. She didn't expect him to bring her lunch. "Demonic meat," he replied as he put a plate in front of her and another in front of him. "Oh, I never had." "Wait, what?" she gasped. "Yup, authentic demonic deer meat. I had some trouble buying and cooking it, so you better savor it," he said as he chose a good juicy piece and set it on her plate, then got one for him. She glared at him. "You are serious?" "Yeah," he nodded as he took a knife and began to cut the steaks in both of their plates into small pieces. "I already told you that you have some very special kinds of meridians." "Right, aha. At first I couldn't tell what it was, but after meeting your mother and checking her yesterday I got this idea, that your meridians really reassemble the veins of a demonic beast," he said as he then looked at her. "And demonic beasts can eat others safely. This, you suspect my ancestors ate demonic meat?" She paused for a moment then asked, making him nod in approval. This girl was really smart. "Yes," he said. "At first I suspected that there might be some techniques needed when eating the meat, but that would be too time-consuming and needed a lot of experimentation, so last night I thought of a different method, fixing the mana while cooking," he said. "Oh, now come on, try some before they get cold," he said, using the fork to grab a small juicy piece of meat and then pushing it to Summer, feeding her by his hand. "You want me to eat this?" "Yes. Nothing bad will happen," she asked nervously. "I am here in case that happens, just make sure to keep track of the mana in your body," he said. In fact, she didn't need to do that as he was already planning to keep an eye just in case anything were to go wrong, but he wanted her to use the opportunity to analyze what would happen. "Fine," she said, biting on the fork. Ah, in her mind, an amazing flavor that she had never tasted anything like before exploded like fireworks. "This is fucking delicious," She began to talk in shock. Focus, he scolded. Right. She slowly chewed the piece of tender meat and swallowed it. Then she felt it. Almost immediately wisps of mana began to break through her stomach and latch onto the nearby meridians. Ah, she began to feel some pain. Don't resist, just make sure to push it away from your zero circuit and toward your inverted meridians, he said. Okay, she nodded, closing her eyes to carefully control the flow. Ah, she gasped. What? He frowned, he couldn't see anything wrong with her now. It feels amazing. As if I am surging with power, she said in shock. As if an endless river is flowing inside of me. Oh, Adrian was taken aback. Quickly, try to move that energy into your muscles, make sure to spread it evenly. Ah, okay, Summer nodded. Oh, it's gone, she said a moment later. Of course, it's gone, your body has absorbed it all, Adrian sighed. Take another bite, try to monitor what is happening this time. Summer grabbed the fork from his hand and then took another bite. This time, although really enjoying the taste, she made sure to keep an eye on the mana flow. Adrian, who put his hand on her shoulder, also kept an eye on what was happening in her body. It was a party in there, as if her body had been thirsty for years and finally found the water it could drink. Interesting, he gasped, not expecting this result at all. So a technique might not have been needed from the start. Well, at least she would no longer need him to keep monitoring her. He sighed as he grabbed his own fork, cut a very small piece, and put it in his mouth. Oh, he paused. It tasted like shit. No, not just shit, but fresh shit that still had all its youthful vigor. Ah, he almost puked. No wonder no one ate this thing even after it got processed to remove the mana. Summer, who enjoyed it, might have some genetic modifier that made her like it, but for a normal guy like him, it was totally intolerable. Still, wanting to see its effect, Adrian forced himself to swallow it with great difficulty. He grabbed the side of the table to stop himself from puking as he watched the insides of his body carefully. The same thing that happened with Summer was happening with him. The mana left his stomach and began to enter his meridians. But due to him having normal ones, the mana began to move in a chaotic, turbulent manner, nearly injuring him. He quickly activated his circuit, absorbing all the mana and then reversing it before letting it out again. Thankfully he already managed to constrain it somehow during the cooking, or it would have been really dangerous. The process to completely neutralize the mana was complicated and tiresome, and to fully digest everything in that tiny piece of meat, it took him a full 10 minutes. By the time he opened his eyes and drank some water to resin his mouth, Summer had finished her plate. Finished already? He asked in surprise. For some reason, he felt that her body seemed a little healthier than before. Yeah, what about you? She asked, looking at his dish with desire in her eyes. Take it, he said, pushing it to her with disgust. My hypothesis was correct, only you can eat this, and maybe your mother and sister too. Really? She asked with her mouth full, already attacking Adrian's dish with full force. Yeah, but since they are normal humans, we might need to be careful. So let's keep this until you reach your 5th circuit and become proficient enough to stop them if anything goes wrong, he proposed. Okay, she nodded as she put down her fork. The second dish was gone. Did you like it? He asked in surprise. It tasted amazing, Summer said, blushing a little as she felt her actions were a little crazy. It was just that she felt that she needed to eat this meat. It seemed like we were on the right track. Adrian nodded, then paused as he watched Summer begin to undress. What are you doing? She began to breathe hard. I don't know, I feel hot, she said. Could it be some poison reaction? Adrian frowned. No, she bit her lip. Sorry, what? The next thing Adrian realized was that he was being pushed down and a very pretty girl with unfocused eyes was sitting on top of him and kissing his lips as if his breath was the only thing that could keep her alive.